Welcome to the Gorgeous Guru podcast. I'm your host, Day, the Gorgeous Guru. On this podcast, I'll be sharing candid commentary, practical advice, and intuitive insights on life, love, current events, and everything in between. If you're craving real talk, inspiration, and soulful guidance, you're in the right place. So tune in, get comfortable, and get ready to be inspired. Hey, welcome into my first episode of the Gorgeous Guru podcast. I am so excited. So today's topic is reclaiming audacity, right? But before we get into the topic, I want to share a little bit about who I am and how I came to be in this podcast space at this time. Okay, so I have a few different titles and ways I like to describe myself, right? I already said my name is Day, aka the Gorgeous Guru. So I am an initiated Orisha priestess, which simply means I was initiated into the priesthood of the Ifa Orisha spiritual system over in Nigeria. Okay, so I would be considered a priestess of Oya, which is an Orisha. Hey, Oya. I am a divine messenger. And I call myself a divine messenger, y'all, because some of you who follow me over from YouTube and know my journey there, honey, I will read your life down, okay? I can read your past, present, and future using tarot cards and sometimes just my intuition. And I'm also a visionary. But overall, I consider myself a multi-passionate individual with a love for learning and creative expression. So I actually started my content creation journey back when blogs were popular. Remember blogs, y'all? Way back in the day. So I started a blog called the Not So Patiently Waiting for His Love blog. At the time, I was single and fed up with the dating scene, and I decided to write about it. And I was just in this period of great change in my life. And I remember the first blog posts that I shared, right? I shared them on Facebook. I was afraid to take ownership of them because I was being so vulnerable in the blog post. So I actually lied and said, hey guys, check out this blog that my friend wrote, right? Because I was afraid to be vulnerable and authentic. And after some time, I was able to take ownership of my work, right? And say, okay, I wrote this blog. But what was really interesting about this was I actually built up a nice little following around this blog. I had a Facebook group where there was so much like interaction, right? Me and a lot of other people were just talking about dating and relationships and all these different things. And I actually hosted some singles events and things like that. And I am a Brooklynite for life, honey. I was born and raised in Brooklyn. And, so New York City was my home base where we threw those events. So it was I would say it was a successful venture, and it taught me a lot about content creation before content creation was even a thing. I eventually went on to self-publish my first book, which is called The Not So Patiently Waiting Handbook, which is on Amazon under my pen name, Daydream Alston. And I actually have a free e-version of the book on my website, daydreamalston.com, if anyone's interested in checking it out. Okay, so then in 2010, I went through a period of spiritual awakening that rocked my world, y'all. Like really shook my foundations. And as a result of that, I moved on from talking about dating and relationships and began documenting my spiritual journey on YouTube. So I have a channel called The Divine Mind on YouTube. And what I did was, because I was moving away from Christianity and into African spirituality, Ifa Orisha, Isheshe tradition, I wanted to document it. So I started this YouTube channel where I did just that. I documented my journey, leaving Christianity, entering the Yoruba spiritual system, going on to become an initiated priestess and things like that. So because of that experience, I've actually authored about 6 books and 2 instructional guides at this point. I've developed 2 oracle decks and built a thriving spiritual community over on YouTube with over 13,000 subscribers. And I've actually provided spiritual coaching and intuitive readings to hundreds of people. And every time I say that, y'all, I get really excited because to be able to use my gift of intuitive channeling, right? Receiving messages from the divine to help others, to guide and coach them and help them get on the right track is amazing to me. Like, I'm always so proud that I get to do this work. So here I am. Now I've been intuitively led to start a podcast and step out of my comfort zone. And to be quite frank, my comfort zone is spirituality. I love discussing spirituality. I love, thinking about and trying to figure out the reason and the purpose behind this life we're living and things like that. But I'm being pushed because I know there's so much more to explore in terms of my creative expression, right? And I'm being called to do just that, to explore a variety of topics through my gift of creative expression and not like pigeonholing myself or just sticking to spirituality and spiritual topics. So my stepping into this role represents me having the audacity or the boldness to shine, right? To step out of my comfort zone and reveal more of my true nature. When I'm doing the videos for YouTube, which are typically like tarot readings and ancestor readings, I'm channeling messages from the divine, right? So it's kind of like I'm the mouthpiece for the divine. I'm the megaphone. And they use me to get certain messages to certain people. So I'm not sharing as much of myself, my thoughts, my beliefs as I could be in that space, right? I often hold back aspects of myself. But here on the podcast, I get to be more open and I'll be revealing more of my beliefs, my humor, etc. Okay, so let's get into the topic, honey, reclaiming audacity. Lately, I've been considering my own lack of audacity or boldness. There was a time when I was so adventurous and passionate, right? I would take risks, I would be more spontaneous. And I noticed when I was doing that, I was having so much more fun in my life. Life was like an adventure, right? So let me give you an example of something I did. And it's kind of crazy. Now, when I think back to it, I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I did that. But there was a time after college where I had landed what we consider a good city job, honey. So New York City jobs are coveted roles. You know what I mean? And that's just like city jobs in general. A lot of people see them as coveted roles and things they really aspire to because you get good benefits. And then after about 20 years, you get a good pension and things like that. So I'm out of college for some years. I get this job with a city agency. And although I'm like living the dream, right, for some, I realize that I'm not living my dream. That's not my dream to work a city job for 20 years and then retire. And no offense to anybody where that is your dream, because I fucks with it. I respects that. But for me, I'm doing this every day and I'm like, wait a minute. I don't want to do this. So I had the nerve, y'all, to quit that job and not have another job lined up, right? And this is all around the time I had that spiritual awakening. So I guess it all needed to kind of happen at the same time to get me on track. But I remember just coming to the conclusion like, okay, this is not the dream I want for myself. When people talk about the American dream, my American dream is I align with money, but I also have freedom. Like I'm not bound by a job, by having to be in a particular place at a particular time. That's my dream. At that time, though, I didn't know that because I had taken on what I perceived to be the dream. Like, okay, this is the dream. So during that time, I have to be honest, it was the best of times and it was the worst of times. It was the best of times because I finally had the time to really sit down and take stock of my natural gifts, talents, skills, abilities, and then really think about what my passions are, and that's when I learned that I love creative expression. And now when I look back, like, I started a blog, that's creative expression. Then I went to YouTube, creative expression. Podcasting, creative expression. Right? So it kind of was like, okay, that came together at that time when I finally was able to sit down and just think about that. So I learned a lot about who I am, what I have to offer the world. But I also met some of the greatest, most amazing and inspiring people because I was free. I could go out a lot. So I remember I went out one night and I loved dance hall parties. So I looked up, dance hall parties, found this party and went to this party and met a group of people that were the most dynamic people my age I had ever met, and they were all living their dreams. So there were DJs who had honed their craft so much and had become so popular that they were now touring with, major artists, going all over the world, playing for artists. There were party promoters who their job was to promote parties. One of my friends was a graphic designer who worked on the covers of magazines like Vogue. It's like everybody was doing things that were in their heart to do. Professional dancers, honey, they're teaching classes. They're dancing with artists like Beyonce. They're on stage at award shows, actors, actresses. It was just amazing. And I remember looking at these people and being like, oh my God, like they are living their dreams. And that's what I needed to see at that time, right? So I could see clearly that I had taken on a dream that wasn't mine because maybe a part of me didn't know that I could live my own dream. But seeing these people helped me to realize that. At that time, I also met one of my spiritual teachers who was just so instrumental in my development as a human being, right? So that's why I said it was the best of times because I had those experiences, but it was the worst of times because a sister don't like being broke. I hate it, so I ended up running out of money and having to couch surf and all of that. So now when I think back to those actions, right, that action of leaving a job without having another one, I'll cringe. I'm like, oh my God, who does that, right? It's like at this point, I've become such a responsible adult that I've lost my audacity, right? Because now I'm like, oh, you can't do that. You can't leave a job. You got to hold on for dear life. And I've done that, but I've held on to jobs that are like hella toxic to the point now where my spirit team has to like bring a job to an end. Like they'll make something happen so it could close out so I won't stay in a situation that's stressful to me. But because of my sense of responsibility, I have a hard time letting go or moving on. Meanwhile, back in the day, honey, I just leave a good job and it was nothing, and I just believed I would be okay. And I was. So I'm noticing now that I've become such a responsible adult, right? And I've lost my audacity. This has led to my life feeling so dry and uninspired. And that's why I wanted to talk about reclaiming audacity today, because for me, I've learned and I've seen that I need to get this audacity back. There has to be a balance between my being responsible and me being audacious, right? Like there has to be a balance because I can't live in just that responsible state because it's whack. I also realized that audacity and pleasure go hand in hand. So when I'm bold, when I'm audacious, when I'm shining, when I'm doing what's in my heart to do, life is sweeter. It's just more pleasurable, and my boldness often led me to the most lush and exciting experiences. And I got to be honest, I miss those days. Days filled with carefree abandon, laughter, and like a focus on sensuality, enjoying the senses. So as I reclaim my audacious nature, honey, I will be essentially reclaiming pleasure. So for example, back in the day, I used to do this thing called Adventure Saturdays, right? And Adventure Saturdays where I would get up on a Saturday, get dressed, go out, and just find something to do. So sometimes I would have something lined up, But other times I would be spontaneous, right? Maybe I would take the ferry across the water to another part of the city and just go chill, journal, go eat, get a coffee, go to a bar. Sometimes if I knew a friend was doing like a day party, I would pull up at the day party alone. Okay. I would not worry about it. I would just be like, look, I'm going to go to this day party. So I had all these adventures, right? When I was more audacious and bold and spontaneous. Like I used to go to the US Open tennis tournament that they would hold in the city every year. And they had these community days that were free. So again, I didn't worry about if someone could come with me. I remember one day I went, they got their bar, honey. They got their signature drinks. The signature drinks be good. I had a drink. And then I noticed there was a group of people just walking. And I was like, well, shit, let me follow this group. Where are they going? And I ended up following that group right to Serena Williams' practice session. So I got to see one of the tennis greats practicing, right? Watching it up close and personal because I was bold, I was audacious, and I was just going out and doing things that I felt called to do. So let me tell y'all how I came up with this topic of reclaiming audacity. My audacity hero, y'all, is Onijah Robinson. So some of you may recognize that name. Onijah Robinson is a Black woman who ventured to Pakistan for love. She was over there for a few months, right, with her boyfriend and his family. And she became so popular over there that they started holding press conferences for her, letting her pop her shit and make demands at the press conferences. And all of this went viral. So it's on the news, it's all on social media. And I remember being so floored and amused by her audacity. I could not imagine being in another country and having the nerve to make demands, right? And talking shit and just telling them, oh, y'all buildings are messed up. Y'all need to fix y'all buildings. It was crazy. I could not believe it. And I would literally be clutching my imaginary pearls as I watched her on these press conferences. But also, as I'm watching Onijah, Sister Onijah, honey, I was like, wait a minute. This is the type of boldness, the type of audacity I need to display in my life because otherwise life is like a boring, dull mess. Like, what is the point? And of course, I wouldn't go as far as Onijah, right? And go to another country and then be making demands. But shit, I need to be more audacious. I need to be more bold because boldness gets you in situations where, I don't know, it's just so much more enjoyable. It makes life so much sweeter, and that's what I want. So because I want to be as audacious as my hero, Onijah, here are my demands, honey, because I have demands too. Because remember, she got up there on those press conferences and was rattling off a list of demands. So I decided I'm going to do some demands too. So my number one demand is from here on out, I will not dim my light so that others will feel comfortable in my glow. I learned a long time ago, y'all, that people will not like you if they think you're too confident, if you're sure of yourself, all of those things. So I would hold back and kind of dim myself. But you know what? I'm not doing that anymore. Respectfully, I'm shining on you hoes from here on out, okay? Demand number 2, I'm only entertaining people, places, and experiences that are vibrant, joy-filled, and soulful because nothing else will do. Demand number 3, I'm saying no every time I feel the need to. No more people pleasing or doing things out of obligation. Some people ain't gonna like that one. They be all right though. Demand number 4, I'm committed to experiencing much more pleasure and play in my life because, like I said, I've noticed life just gets too dull for me. And demand number 5, in the words of my hero, Onijah, shout out to Sister Onijah, I'm not talking unless y'all giving me land or 2,000 or more every week. Respect to Allah. Okay? Shout out Sister Onijah. We'll be ending each episode with gorgeous guru prompts, right? And these are prompts for self-reflection and journaling if you are called to journal. So here are our prompts for today. Have you lost your audacity? When was the last time you were bold or audacious? What steps can you take today to reclaim your audacity? To continue this conversation, join me on Instagram at The Gorgeous Guru Podcast. That's The Gorgeous Guru Podcast, all one word. And thank you so much for joining me today. You could have spent this time doing anything, but you decided to spend it with me. And I have to admit, I am so grateful. Talk to you next time. Peace.